And welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for December 31st, 2020. Most of you will probably listen to this in 2021, but Happy New Year for all of you who are listening in 2021. If you're listening in 2020, we don't care about you. No, kidding, of course. But I'm Erik Clancy. I'm joined by Patrick Kelly. Thanks for the support as always, guys. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We always appreciate hearing from you, and it definitely helps grow the show. So we appreciate all that, but I guess the biggest thing to talk about and the first thing to talk about is the Brodie Lee, who passed away. Was it Saturday or Sunday, Patrick?
I believe it was the day after Christmas. So yeah, I believe it was Saturday.
Yeah. So that was obviously the news that kind of resonated the most, like over the holiday. And it's weird because I feel like a lot of these, we've had a lot of pro wrestling deaths in the last few years, but not a ton of active ones. And this was I guess the last, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, the last active one on a major scale would have been, I guess, Benoit and then Eddie before that. Am I missing people? I mean, Test was on the independent scene. There were guys there. What I'm trying to say is guys that you see working week in and week out on national television. Can you think of who's more recent than those?
Honestly, of meeting that criteria of active participation on a weekly wrestling show, I think Benoit may have been the last one. If there's one that happened in between then and now, I'm forgetting it and it's slipping my mind.
Yeah. If you guys can remember any, hit us up in the comments and remind us, and when we can talk about that. But yeah, I mean, and the Benoit one, of course. It's funny you say that. Funny we're talking about that rather, because I have Slamboree 1998 on right now. But and I've actually paused it right in the opening match, which is Benoit and Finlay. But obviously the Benoit death was a whole other thing. But so if the last one that really resonated like this, I guess, would be Eddie Guerrero. And Luke Harper, Brodie Lee, John Huber. I guess I was taken aback because I've for so long, wrestlers die and it's kind of commonplace in a sad way. And this was such there was such an outpouring of support, and there was such a lot of genuine emotion. And then that show that AEW did last night, Dynamite, which was rewritten totally as a tribute to Brodie Lee. The Dark Order went over everyone, and it was really, I mean this in the best way, hard to watch, in the fact that it was very emotional. It was I was getting choked up quite a bit. It was an enjoyable show in the fact that it celebrated this man and his family. And it was very positive. As weird as that is to say, it has come out of something as tragic as his death. It was a positive show.
Yeah, and that's the best way to describe it. Shows like that I was getting flashbacks to the Owen Hart Memorial show, which that was also very tough to watch. You can't judge it as you would any other wrestling show, and you can't even really enjoy it as you would any other wrestling show. You just kind of gotta appreciate the obvious love and emotion that came out of it, and you could see it on all the wrestlers' faces throughout the matches and all the things they did, and honoring his family the way they did and talking about him the way they did. It was, like you said, it was very tough to watch, but it was also great to see, and it's a great class act from AEW and everybody that was involved in making it.
Yeah. I thought the opening with having his wife and children there, and his younger son, the bell being loud and being upset, it was just it was a lot, it was a lot to take in. It was a lot of emotion. And as I'm a new father, and it kind of I don't know if that stuff hits me more now, but it's very difficult to imagine, leaving your children behind at such a young age. I mean, I'm 35, Brodie Lee was only 6 years older than I am. He's not very old at all. He's kind of in the prime of his career. it's like, wow, it was just a lot. And I mean, I don't think you and I are prepared to talk about this as a normal wrestling show. I think we should just talk about some of the stuff we liked about it. I mean, man, oh man, like I love the MJF spot so much. I'm sure he got permission to do that. And like, what a cool moment that was for anyone who didn't see it. He like was yelling at Brodie Lee's kid in classical MJF fashion, pulled off his mask, and then whap, Singapore cane right in the face. They lose the match. The good guys go over, and like it's just so much fun.
Yeah, it was. And props to Brodie Lee's kid for being willing to do that spot and being up for it. It looked like, in what is obviously a very hard time for him and his family, like they were there to kind of enjoy themselves and have a little bit of positivity in the middle of all this.
Yeah. And I don't even remember. That was Hangman and Silver and Reynolds, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So like, first of all, the Dark Order being faces the whole night was somehow like the coolest thing ever. And like, I've never been a huge Dark Order fan. Like when they first came in, I didn't like them. When Brodie Lee took over, I thought they got a lot better. I thought Brodie Lee's character, and you can go back and listen to our old shows, whether they're on Talk Shoe or whether we talk about them on the YouTube version of the show. I thought he brought a lot of like gravitas to it, and his character was very interesting.
He basically saved it.
Yeah, I definitely think I think if they had chosen Matt Hardy, it would have sunk. Like you and I have said that many times, and I'm glad they went the way they did. But I've never really been into John Silver and Alex Reynolds, especially. I think John Silver's a little goofy, but man, oh man, I was like totally into him last night, and I thought as a like a kind of a goofy baby face with like fire, like it really worked somehow. And I don't know if that was just the emotion of the moment or not, but I was like pumping my fist, like rooting for John Silver like crazy.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see the Dark Order as faces. I don't know if this is going to be the long. I guess they kind of have to be faces moving forward. We'll see how they evolve that. But
yeah, I wonder if there was even thought to that. Like, and I don't. If there wasn't, and I don't blame them. I think probably Tony Khan was like, I don't care. We'll figure that out later. Let's just do this because it's like to honor the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. But for the one night, I thought it was a lot of fun, and again, it just added to the kind of the class of the whole thing. It's like, oh, this is nice. And there were a lot of things that happened throughout the show, like Eric Rowan showing up. That was
a cool
nice surprise.
Yeah, and he had a cool clothesline there. Like, yeah, I thought that was I thought that was very cool. I thought what was I just gonna say? I can't remember. What I know Sting and Darby came out, but what was where the other? Oh yeah, I know the women's tag match. Boy, that was like, I mean, Anna Jay like could barely get through that thing without like bawling, and it like looked like it was really hard. So like, hats off to her. Like, I thought that was cool. Like she was doing her taunt and like could barely get through it, and it was like I was like overcome watching that.
How I knew the show was going to be the way that it was, or the matches were going to be the way that they were when Cole Cabana came out, and he looked like he'd been crying backstage before he came out.
Yeah. And I thought that was cool. I thought putting him with the Young Bucks. I mean, I thought the pairings made sense and were interesting. Like you can get like the idea that like, like this still functions in the context of pro wrestling, and maybe even if it doesn't, like, I think that's probably okay. So yeah, I mean, I like, honestly, as far as the content of the show, I thought it was like lovely. I really liked it. I don't know what else to say beyond it was like a very touching, moving show that I'll kind of remember, and I feel like they did Brodie proud.
Absolutely. And speaking of Brodie Lee's career, it was really great that he got that last run in AEW to kind of, because I think in WWE, he was great in WWE as part of the Wyatt family, but we just kind of thought of him as like kind of a secondhand thug to Bray Wyatt or wherever else they put him. And here you got to see him. It's like, oh, he could take charge of a stable and be really good at it. Oh my God, he could work with Cody, and it's like main event level stuff. And it was nice to get that out of him before his tragic end.
Well, yeah, and it's very difficult to judge a pro wrestler's contribution to the sport and to the industry because, people, it's a fake sport, but for some reason people attribute the character's accomplishments to how good you were, and I mean, you and I have talked about this. I mean, like, is Hulk Hogan or Bruno Sammartino or Gorgeous George or Lou Thez or Ed Lewis or George Hackenschmidt or John Cena or The Rock or Steve Austin, are they the best wrestlers because they were the most successful or the most popular? I mean, to a point, in one aspect they were. Are you the best wrestler because you were able to make somebody else look good? Are you the best pro wrestler because you can put on the most believable, exciting matches? Are you the best pro wrestler because you're the best on the microphone? Are you the best pro wrestler if you help the story? I don't know the answer to that. You and I have talked about that for years. It's why WWE's Hall of Fame criteria is so weird and dumb. And
well,
it's actually
no criteria.
Yeah, it's whoever Vince decides. That's why I prefer the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame as an actual Hall of Fame, because there is criteria. There are expert panels like you would have for the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame, and things like that. And like there's like ways to get in, and it's not just like, it's not the Hall of Good, which WWE has like a bastion of mediocrity in there. Like let's be honest. And anybody gets in. Whereas, I don't know how you define a wrestler's worth, but I do know that like Luke Harper had 2 runs that were really good. He was a believable, integral part to the Wyatt family, which is a very important faction. And like you said, he saved the Dark Order. So and had a top run in AEW, and he had good matches but before that, I mean, he had a run in Chikara, and Chikara is a company that may not be the largest company in the world, but it certainly had. I mean, I think they're done now, but it had a very loyal fan base of passionate people that followed them. So, like, I mean, who's to say how intense someone's contribution to the sport is? So, like, I think it. I think he had a major impact on the sport, and AEW is gonna be worse off without him. The pro wrestling world's gonna be worse off without him. So,
absolutely, and of course, best wishes and all the love and support of his family during all of this.
Absolutely, I thought it was very cool that they signed his son, and they're gonna continue providing them a paycheck. I think that's very cool because I mean, who knows if he had life insurance? I mean, I don't know. But that's your. I'm assuming he's the main breadwinner of the family, and that's difficult to replace for a mother with a single mother with 2 kids.
Absolutely, so, that's a very, very classy move. And we've talked a lot about how there's no exit plan in wrestling, and there's once you're done, and you don't get taken care of by the company that you help make money for. It's like, well, here we've got AEW that are clearly taking care of this family, and I think that's great.
Yeah, definitely. So let's switch gears. And I don't mean this to be callous. I just mean it to talk about it because we as much as Brodie Lee's. Sorry, 1 second here. I'm not peeing. I'm just pouring water into a pot for applesauce we're making for my daughter. So I do want to focus on the business side of this because at the end of the day, pro wrestling is still a business. And I'm wondering, last week's AEW was down from what it had been, which you'd expect. The 0.42 and the 0.45 were very big numbers. I think it went back down to a 0.32, which is very good. Still 4th on the night. Still, but I think Turner's highest rated. Too. Yeah. Turner's highest rated show that isn't the NBA. I'm wondering, and Patrick, I want to get your thoughts on this, and I'll give my reasons for it. I'm wondering, does this show pop a big rating?
I don't know how much. Again, this is something that.
And we're gonna. By the way, we're gonna find out in 3 hours or 4 hours. When the ratings come down. So when people listen to this, they'll know the answer. So this is, I guess, a fun experiment in hearing what we think of if we're wrong or if we're right. But go on.
But yeah, I don't know how widespread the exposure of Brodie Lee's passing was. I guess wrestling fans had caught us off guard. We were paying attention to it, but how much of a mainstream attention is that going to get? I don't know. We'll see. I would imagine that the rating would go up from last week. Same time slot, and I think kind of the emotional attachment to everything that's going on would kind of keep viewers watching. But I'd imagine the rating will be up from last week. I don't know if it'll be like a huge number.
Yeah. So no, last week I thought it was what it was. And actually, I don't know if last week was the 0.32 because that was after the Celtics Bucks game, and it was in the 10 p.m. time slot, which, TNT shows always get ruined because of the NBA scheduling and such. But so here's my theory as far as the business side of this. One, Raw's Owen was one of the biggest shows WWE ever did as far as ratings. It was a huge thing. It got a huge number, and granted, it's in the spring of '99. It's arguably the peak of wrestling's popularity. Mm-hmm. And wrestling deaths get a lot of exposure. I mean, I think deaths in general do, but wrestling deaths do get a lot of exposure. CM Punk made that quote. He's like, the only reason people in the mainstream talk about wrestling is because CM Punk said something or someone died. And it is true to a degree. I spoke to a colleague the other day, and he is a wrestling fan, but he had heard it on CNN and Fox News. Had been talking about it. So I feel like there's been some penetration on top of the fact that it's a holiday weekend, so there's not a ton of stuff going on. I think you might be surprised at what this number might be. Now, like I said, in 4 hours you can come back and you could do a same number as last week and fine. But part of me is thinking like a 0.38, maybe 900,000. Is what I'm thinking.
Okay, well, I mean that's definitely within the realm of possibility. Wasn't speaking of the holiday weekend, wasn't Smackdown's number this week way up from normal?
Yes, Smackdown had the NFL lead-in though, so I think it had 11 million viewers coming in, and then they had 5 million for the overrun, and then by the next quarter hour they were at 3 million. So I mean, so they did something. I thought they did something better than what what AEW did. So AEW, both of the goals of AEW and WWE this week were similar. They had a sports lead-in, and their opportunity to bring in different eyes and to get them to sample the product. I mean, that's always the goal. AEW said, hey, we're going to put Top Flight there because they're young, they're athletic, they're people of color, which is a large portion of the NBA's audience. So they're like, hey, let's give these young, exciting wrestlers some exposure, and we're going to put them with MJF, who's one of our top young guys who can really go and has a great character, and we're going to put him with Chris Jericho. Because Chris Jericho is a guy you'll know from the Attitude Era. So in theory, that all works out well. The problem is, and there's actually a similar problem to what WWE had later, but hold on, got to add some water to these applesauce things. 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. The problem with that, as we all saw, is NBA Twitter saw Jericho and were like, hey, he's super fat. and that was the discussion. And I know a lot of AEW fans were upset about this. I'm an AEW fan. I love watching AEW, but the fact is Jericho is fat. And there's a few ways around this. Some people are like, well, he's doing the aging rock star gimmick. I'm like, okay, that's fine. But if you you also got to understand that's going to turn some people off. When people turn into a fighting show, they generally want to see jack dudes like beating the shit out of each other. And I love Jericho, and Jericho has been invaluable to AEW. But the fact of the matter is, a bunch of people turned on the show and they said, hey, Jericho got really fat and I don't know anyone else in this thing. And that's what happened. WWE said, hey, we're going to put Kevin Owens, Kevin Owens isn't in the best of shape, but we're going to put Roman Reigns. He's our hottest character. He's in good shape. He looks great. And we're going to expose them. I think WWE's plan worked better, but the fact of the matter is, and this will always hamper WWE, it doesn't matter who you put on there. It doesn't matter if it's The Rock. They did The Rock in the first episode of Smackdown. It doesn't matter if it's Steve Austin. They've done him multiple times. It doesn't matter who you put in that spot. The presentation of WWE is what will turn away casuals every single time. They've been losing viewers for since 2001, and it's been accelerated in the last 5 years. It's the presentation. It has always been the presentation. WWE has the best, by far, roster in professional wrestling. I mean, maybe you could say New Japan has better quote unquote workers and they'll put on better matches, but WWE has better stars to connect to the mainstream. And they're in America, and that has a larger population than Japan. So there's that. And also America is the largest cultural exporter in the world. So there's that as well. WWE's roster is never, ever, 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 ever the problem. Nobody can ever beat WWE's roster. They have too many guys. They have too much talent. There's nothing they can't do with their roster.
They have more than one roster. That's how big and how great it is.
Yeah, and it's huge. And anyone who's saying that AEW has a better roster than WWE is insane, because they don't. But what AEW does better, and how AEW is able to compete, is because AEW's presentation is better. That's the difference. And I'm always, you and I have talked about, we talked about it on our 2 weeks ago, and we did How Do You Fix Raw episode. And we said it time and time again, Vince will always come out and he'll be like, well, you want fresh matches? I mean, I get, sure, I'll take that. But your biggest problem is nothing about your show feels real. That's the thing I think is going to work from a business standpoint from the Brodie Lee show, is that was real emotion. That was people really crying. That was how people really felt. And people gravitate towards that. That's why reality TV does so well. Now, I'm not here to tell you that reality TV is totally real and it's not scripted and they don't set up the storylines. Duh, of course they do. But there's just like in pro wrestling, if you can get that edge of reality to it, it works really well. So WWE, I mean, they could put their Dynamite cage match between Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens. The number dropped throughout the show like it always will. And yes, it did a very big number. But we'll see how much of that audience is retained, because WWE had a big audience their first week on SmackDown that they ever did. That was, I think, the last time I watched the WWE show live all the way through, not counting a pay-per-view, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to give them a chance. Is SmackDown going to do a sports program? And then they had Vince and Stephanie come out and be like, hello, welcome to the WWE universe. I'm like, oh, fuck. This is the same shit. And then they had Rock and Becky Lynch do an Attitude Era segment with Baron Corbin. And I'm like, holy fuck, it's the same goddamn thing. It's the same thing. They have no idea what they're doing. And that'll always hamper them. It'll always hamper them. When you have Triple H talking to Ric Flair about his evil plan, and then Batista's sneaking behind a door like Scooby-Doo, nobody's going to fucking buy that. I mean, wrestling fans will. Wrestling fans who've been indoctrinated to think that that's what wrestling is will believe that. But real people are going to be like, oh, that's fucking stupid. I mean, Mick Foley told a great story in his book. He had a match with Rock during the halftime of the Super Bowl in 1999, halftime heat. And Mick Foley was going to get the title back from The Rock. And through the course of the match, they're brawling all over, and they do some ridiculous things. He hits him with popcorn, he knocks over. And Foley, I think you know the story I'm going to tell, but Foley's watching at a bar with people who aren't wrestling fans, and everybody's getting really into it, and they're digging the match, and and he even hits him with popcorn, and they're like, oh, and they laugh and they think that's funny. And Patrick, I will let you say what killed the match for everybody watching that show.
Was it that downward shot on the forklift? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So for those of you who haven't seen the match, the finish is Mick Foley gets Rock on a pallet And then there's a forklift, and he lowers the pallet down on the Rock and he pins him. Now that's a pretty clever finish, actually. If you're doing a Falls Count empty arena match, that's a clever finish. There's no two ways about that. But the problem is you're looking at the forklift, and there's no camera on it or anything. And then when the forklift starts to go down, you see a bird's eye view shot of the Rock, like reacting to it. And everybody watching that said, "Oh, geez," and they immediately tuned out. And that's a microcosm of what I mean when WWE is overproduced. They could have just done that finish, and everybody would have went, "Huh, that's clever." And because in the context of the story, it fits. They're fighting. There's a cameraman following them around, and then he pins them. But what happens? Oh, a magical camera appears that we can't see from other angles, but appears above the Rock, and it immediately snaps you out of it. Like, it is the most destructive portion of their programming. It's what keeps people away. They do not understand that. They have no idea. They think the way Kevin Dunn films is amazing. They think that the way how people awkwardly stand cheating out style, like they're in a high school theater play, slightly 45 degrees angle, watching TV in the backstage is normal, and people think that's okay. And it's not. It turns off people. It legitimately turns off people. One of their former champions recalls a story about it. So that's what I mean when I say the production is so overproduced, and it's so false is the best word I can describe it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's been a problem for years. And you would think after that happened with the halftime heat match that they would have ironed that out. Said, okay, we can't do that type of stuff anymore. And they just doubled and tripled down on it. And it's funny you mentioned the backstage segments, because one thing that always bothered me is that when you see two characters having a conversation in WWE, they kind of awkwardly stand shoulder to shoulder with each other with their faces in view of the camera. And I don't know about you. I have never held a conversation with anybody with that type of posture.
No way. You haven't?
No, never.
I don't believe you. I don't think that's right. I think you're a weird person, Patrick.
I am. I'm very weird. Like, Vince would look at me and go, "What's wrong with that guy?"
Oh. But I mean, there's that. There's the long. I don't know if they do them anymore, but there's the long cuts after they stop talking. They just hold on them for 4 seconds, and then they fade out for whatever reason. There's the bad acting. There's the way, it's boss time. It's boss time. It's every bit of that. That all comes together in a shit stew. And that is and they're like, why are we down 50% in 5 years? I don't know, bud. Watch your fucking show. I don't know what to tell you.
I would feel like somebody's got to be bringing this type of stuff up. If they're bringing in Hollywood writers, they're bringing in Hollywood level producers. Someone's got to be putting.
I'm sure they do, but I think it's so ingrained. I think it's so ingrained in them, and it's so ingrained in us, because I bring this stuff up a lot, and people will be like, I mean, I bring it up on the show every week. Because I'm hoping it would change, because I love WWE. I'm sorry, I loved WWE. I was a WWE guy. I'm from New York. I live in New York. I've always loved WWE. That was I preferred it over WCW. Looking back now, I'm like, oh wait, neither of them were that far off the mark back then. But I've always been a WWE guy, and I wish it would change. But I think it's so ingrained, nobody even questions it. Because I even watch. I watch I can't remember if it was Double or Nothing or All Out, but All Out and Double or Nothing had a ton of that shit. They had all these segments, and they weren't as bad as WWE's, and you could plausibly say that oh, somebody's filming this and stuff, but you can still see the need for skits. If I'm running Bill Watts's, UWF or JCP or something, or WWF, how do I tell my stories? I don't need backstage film things. I need my announcers to communicate off-screen things that have happened, to color what's going on. I need interviews that for the most part are standard, but are occasionally interrupted to give the idea of spontaneity. I need interference. I need that's how you do things. You tell it in those constraints. There's ways to push the envelope, but there's a reason that shit worked for like 80 years. And it wasn't like, oh shit, you know what everybody's getting tired of? These fucking interviews. Nobody uses that. Boxing doesn't use that. NFL, like fucking everybody uses that shit. Like everybody, like WWE, like has all the things they need to be successful. They're in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because you look back at the 80s and the early 90s when I started getting into it. Even when you would go quote unquote backstage, like I think of stuff like the Jailhouse match from SummerSlam 91.
Yeah.
You look at the way that's shot and the way that's presented, that completely felt real. Like I really felt like the Mountie was actually being dragged through a prison and processed and given the entire process. And it felt like I was watching real cops do this to him. That actually felt real. And it's one of the funniest things they've ever done. So I don't know like how they could miss the mark so much, how they could do it so well 30 some odd years ago. And here they can barely do it to save their lives.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, and I mean, even if you go back to like the Lust in Your Eyes storyline in like 88 or 89, and take out of the fact that like, you know, the Jeff Zucker screw up with that thing, like that whole like Savage Hogan like thing felt super real. Like it felt like there were two people having an argument and then one of them snapped and hit the other one in the back of the head, you know? So like even when they did those like iconic moments, like when Andre came over and ripped off the cross, when like, you know, when Austin has won King of the Ring and is cutting the promo with Hendricks, those are all within a certain context and confines that like that you buy into it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, well, I think in the case of Randy Savage, part of that, why that came off so well is because he may have been legitimately pissed at Hogan and he just used it. But, yeah, I don't know if, again, this probably goes back to the performers back then just had free range to kind of express themselves. They wanted to, the way they wanted to express themselves. And production, you didn't have, you know, it wasn't overly produced. They were just kind of allowed to do their thing and use what works.
Yeah, and like, I mean, AEW gets close to it. And by the way, I know we sound like the oldest, most out of touch humans ever, but like, just listen to us on some of these things. But like the NWA did it really well. I mean, I haven't watched stuff since Into the Fire, really. I don't know if it exists actually, believe it or not, anymore. But you know, like that was, I know it was studio wrestling, but like, there's aspects of studio wrestling that you can use and makes a lot of sense. I mean, and granted, not everyone's going to be Eddie Kingston on the mic, but you can help people so they're like not terrible. Like, how does like Ricochet get to WWE? How long has Ricochet been there? Like 3 years, 4 years, maybe.
Roughly 3 years.
So how are you like I don't blame Ricochet, but how is Ricochet there for 3 years and he's like kind of now getting slightly better on the mic? Like, how does that fucking happen? That shows your system sucks. Like, if you cannot improve anybody, what is the point?
Which, by the way, we saw Ricochet when he was in Lucha Underground as Prince Puma, and on the rare occasion when he did speak, it was actually pretty solid. So again, like
yeah, he was solid. He wasn't great, but yes, he's better than he was in WWE.
Yeah. Well, Rey Mysterio is another great example. We thought of him as being terrible on the mic in WWE, and then he gets to Lucha Underground. It's like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah. You know, and it's like. And then there's some people that are like, well, you know, I think the problem is that the company, the company's made itself into such a heel, and it pisses off a lot of fans. I'm like, that's the biggest load of bullshit ever. Like, literally, I can diffuse that with the Austin McMahon feud like in 3 seconds. Like, and the thing is, like, when people say like, oh, the company shouldn't position itself as a heel, like. So, first of all, it doesn't. It gives you the most like corporatized, sanitized garbage ever. Like, this is the WWE, like the greatest entertainers and athletes and blah 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 blah, and like they're just here to have fun and entertain you. Like that's them trying to make themselves a face. By the way, they're just really bad at it. Like I never bought that idea. Like, because if you're trying to be a face, you're just like a phony corporate like press release, you know?
Oh, you're John Cena, basically.
Yeah, no, for like 10 years, he just came out there and just narrated the whole goddamn show. He was like, well, last week this guy did this and then I did that, and oh boy, he's a tough competitor, but I think I can beat him. I love the WWE. I love what it means, and I've been a fan all my life, and I love you fans. Like, that was the company being a fucking face. Enjoy that shit. Like, it doesn't, none of that shit matters. Like, it doesn't, you just have to connect to the characters.
Yeah, and that's true. And it's funny the way they present themselves. It's like, dude, they make Disney look modest by comparison. Like, Disney likes to stroke their own ego from time to time, but good Lord, they got nothing on WWE.
Yeah, and I'll take my Disney shares for 180 a pop over WWE's 50. You second rate Walt. All right, so we got Wrestle Kingdom coming up.
Yes, we do.
I'm so out of the loop. I don't even know that card. Do you have it?
I can pull it up for you real quick.
All right. I don't think I've watched a New Japan. This is sad. I don't think I've watched a New Japan show since Dominion, actually.
I've watched a couple in between, so I kind of know where a lot of this is going, but I haven't watched it in about a month or so.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so for night one, we've got the New Japan Rambo as the dark match. That's basically the New Japan Rumble.
Wait, they call it the New Japan Rambo now?
Yeah, and it's going to be used to set up qualifiers for the Provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2021 trophy on night 2. So I guess the final 4 of that will face each other. Yeah, whatever this thing is. I'm not even sure what this is.
Is that the thing that they've had for a while where you have to defend it through the year and then... Is it that thing?
Non-traditional. It has... Okay, King of Pro Wrestling, it follows a non-traditional formula. It has no title belt, and only one wrestler per year is recognized as the champion. Instead, a provisional champion is first determined during the year. The provisional champion must defend his provisional title.
Yeah, I think that was like Gato's big, this is our saving us during the pandemic idea.
Yeah. Okay. So the final 4 of the New Japan Rambo will then face each other in a 4-way on night 2.
Okay.
For that trophy. We've got Hiromu Takahashi taking on El Phantasmo, with the winner getting an IWGP Junior Heavyweight title shot on night 2. That should be cool. For the IWGP Tag Team Championship, we've got the Dangerous Techers, Tai Chi and Zack Sabre Jr. taking on the Gorillas of Destiny.
Oh man, I like one half of that tag team.
For the IWGP United States Championship Challenge Rights Certificate. So I guess it's the winner gets an eventual U.S. Title shot. It'll be Kenta taking on Satoshi Kojima.
Doesn't Kenta have that? Like, Kenta holds that, right?
He holds it. He's defending it.
Okay. Wait, he's defending against Kojima?
Yes.
What? Did something happen where people care about him now since I left?
Maybe. I don't know. I didn't was involved in the situation.
Is Tenzan still wrestling?
Tenzan, he's not on either card. He might be in the Rambo. I don't know. But
yeah. Oh man, I feel like I've missed a lifetime of things now. I've missed like 6 months, and I feel like I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah. We've got Hiroshi Tanahashi taking on Great-O-Khan.
Oh God, I haven't watched him forever. Who the hell is Great-O-Khan?
He's like a thug that works for Will Ospreay, who recently turned heel. He's actually, based on what I've seen, he's actually pretty good.
Yeah, Will Ospreay is like his own group, right?
Yeah. He's got his own thing going on.
Okay.
At the moment. Yeah, it's pretty good. Speaking of Ospreay, he will be taking on Kazuchika Okada, which is probably the match I'm looking forward to the most.
Me too. I know about that one. I've been following that one.
Mm-hmm. And then in the main event for both the IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental Championships, we've got Naito defending against Ibushi. I would imagine Ibushi would win.
I know. Then you can no longer say it's Ibushi. Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Well, we'll see how night 2 goes. Night 2, we've got 2 Stardom tag team matches as the dark matches. That's just a way to showcase Stardom wrestling, I guess. There's the 4-way for the King of Pro Wrestling trophy that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
For the Junior Tag Team Championship, we've got Suzuki-gun, El Desperado, and Kanemaru taking on 1 or 8, Taiguchi and Master Wato, which is a great name, by the way.
Credits will do just fine.
For the Never Openweight Championship, we've got Shingo Takagi taking on Jeff Cobb. That could be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We've got former LIJ members going at it with Evil taking on Sonata.
Oh, God, you've got to win Sonata.
One would hope. For the junior heavyweight title, we've got Taiji Ishimori taking on the winner of the Takahashi Phantasmo match from night 1.
Oh, I hope it's Takahashi, and that'll be awesome.
Absolutely. And then in the main event, we've got the winner of the Naito Ibushi match from night 1 defending both titles against Jay White.
Oh, okay, cool. So, how many people are going to be in that building?
Last I heard, it was 5,000.
Okay, that's going to be weird.
Yeah. It'll be weird to see, like, people.
Yeah. Can you believe we've had almost a year of pandemic wrestling?
Yeah, I know. It is kind of weird. It's almost like if and when we go back to having crowds, I don't know if I'll be used to it. Like, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, like, it shows, like, I think a lot of the companies have adapted really well. I think they'll be better for it because, I mean, at first I'm like, oh man, this sucks for AEW because they were like kind of getting on their roll and like getting some things together. But I think they've like forged in fire, been able to kind of move ahead. And New Japan is like, I mean, they can't run as many shows as they want, but I mean, eventually you're going to have crowds again for these things. And like, whether it's masks on or off or whatever, you will have crowds and you'll be ready. I mean, I think the one it's hurt the most is WWE, specifically Raw, not SmackDown, not NXT, because NXT's ratings have been steady. SmackDown has been pretty good. Raw has like tanked, and I think what happened is like that like the pandemic exposes bad creative. Like it's the crowd, but it's also like, hey, this is fucking stupid. like nobody's around, and you're like, I can't pretend to like this for much longer.
Yeah, and there was also, especially early on when this all started, WWE programming was actually the hardest for me to watch because it's like, oh my God, they're still playing to a crowd that's not there. It's the weirdest thing where they do all their and they look out into the crowd that's not there. It's bizarre.
It is so weird, and that's like what like. It's so weird because it's how do I put this? It's so weird because they're not wrong. You want to interact with the crowd. You want to engage with the audience. That's not the problem. The problem is they make it such a thing and it's such an artificial thing. Like, it's not take it in the moment. It's like, stand this way and react like this for this many seconds. So it's like improv with the crowd, but don't improv at all. Do these things. And you've like, it's supposed to enliven the dialogue between the crowd and the performers and make it more real. And all it does is highlight how phony it is. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's again, if it doesn't feel real, there's a real good chance you've got too much of a stranglehold over how everything's produced, and it just comes off as factory assembled. It's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's like, let's play some loose jazz. Here are the notes. Just follow and do what I do. Thank you.
Oh, and I have an update on the Kenta Kojima match. Didn't mention this, but I saw the note here. Juice Robinson was originally supposed to be Kenta's opponent, but he suffered an eye injury, so that's why Kojima's there.
That makes sense because Kojima basically just wrestles young boys.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we've got some good stuff here. We've had a good chat. Everybody, thank you for joining us today. I hope you all have a great new year. I hope sincerely for every one of you that 2021 is better than 2020, but it's not going to change overnight. So, but yeah, check back in for next week. Like, subscribe, share. We really appreciate it. It helps the show out a lot. Let us know what you think below. But for right now, I'm Eric Clancy, and for Patrick Kelly, we are
signing off.